All right, today we're looking at something pretty wild. A school curriculum that wasn't just written by a person, but was co-designed from the ground up with an AI. So yeah, we're going to break down what this human-AI partnership actually means for the future of the classroom. So at the core of this whole thing is what they're calling an innovator's partnership. And you've got to understand, this isn't just about a teacher using some new software. Think of it more like two experts in a workshop. One is a veteran educator, and the other is a really sophisticated AI. They're not just giving and taking orders. They are genuinely collaborating, brainstorming together.
So it really begs the question, right? What happens when you actually pair up a seasoned educator with a powerful AI to design a curriculum together? What does that even look like in practice? How does it all work?
Okay, to figure that out, let's meet the authors of this thing. And yeah, I said authors, plural, because one is a human, a real pioneer in EdTech, and the other, well, it's his AI partner.
So, meet Ken Peterson. This isn't just some tech guy dabbling in education. He's a retired educator who spent his entire career in the trenches figuring out how to blend curriculum design with technology. But here's what's really important about him. His whole career has been laser-focused on equity and putting the student first. He's the human heart and the vision behind this whole project.
And then you've got his partner, Microsoft Copilot. But again, we have to stop thinking about it as just a tool. The term they use is an AI thinking partner, and that's a really specific choice of words. The whole idea is that the AI isn't just a glorified search engine or a word processor. It's an active collaborator that actually helps expand the educator's own abilities, making the whole creative process smoother and, frankly, better. So you have the team, the human expert and the AI partner. And their mission? Basically, to blow up the old way of designing a curriculum. Because let's be real, the world is changing at lightning speed, and those old, static lesson plans just can't keep up anymore. And this slide really gets to the heart of the change. Think about traditional lesson planning. It's kind of like a railroad track, right? It's static, you follow it from point A to point B. The new framework they built, called the Future Ready Unit Planning Framework, or FRUP for short, is totally different. It's more like a set of Legos. It's dynamic, it's modular, and it's meant to be rearranged and adapted on the fly.
So the mission statement here is pretty clear. The whole point of FRUP is to get students ready for a world that won't sit still. And how do they do that? By mixing three key ingredients: technology, ideas from different subjects, not just keeping them in silos, and a real baked-in focus on equity. It's not just about memorizing facts anymore. It's about building a much bigger, more complete picture.
Okay, so that's the big idea. But what does this FRUP framework actually look like? Let's pop the hood and see how it's built. So first up are those dynamic modular structures we mentioned. Again, instead of one long, rigid lesson plan, FRUP is made of these flexible, swappable pieces. And the reason this is so huge is that it puts student voice front and center. The curriculum can actually bend and shape itself around what students are curious about, which leads to way more authentic, real-world learning.
And that brings us to the idea of remixable modules. This is where that Lego analogy really comes to life. Imagine you're teaching marine biology. Instead of a textbook chapter, you have a bunch of modules. One might be a virtual reality dive on a coral reef. Another could be a project analyzing local water quality. The teacher can then mix and match, or remix, these modules to fit their specific students. It makes every single lesson feel fresh and relevant.
Now, this next part is absolutely critical. A focus on equity is woven into the very DNA of this framework. This isn't an add-on or an afterthought. FRUP is built from the ground up to support what's called culturally responsive teaching. But what does that really mean? It means making sure the books, the examples, the history, all of it, reflect the diverse backgrounds of the students in the classroom. The goal is for every kid to see themselves in what they're learning, which, as you can imagine, makes a massive difference.
Okay, so we've got the framework down, but where does the AI, where does Copilot actually fit in? How does it help build all this? This is where that human-AI partnership really gets interesting.
Well, Copilot plays four really distinct roles here. First, it streamlines all the grunt work, the tedious stuff like drafting outlines or finding connections between topics. That alone saves a ton of time. Second, it's a huge help with personalizing the modules for students with different learning needs. Third, and this is super cool, it actually helps the teacher embed those equity strategies we just talked about, suggesting diverse resources or viewpoints. And finally, it's the engine that makes all that remixing possible, allowing teachers to adapt and change things on the fly.
So what's the bottom line for the teacher? Well, you can see it right here. When Copilot handles the busy work,
The educator gets to spend their time on what really matters, creative lesson design and focusing on equity. By helping with personalization and equity, it makes it easier to support every student, and maybe most importantly, it acts like a force multiplier for the teacher's own expertise, bringing new ideas and data to the table.
All right, so let's put it all together. You've got Ken Peterson's human vision and decades of experience, combined with the power of his AI partner. What's the final result? What's the future-ready difference?
It really boils down to this. What they've built is a system that empowers teachers, taking the tedious parts off their plate so they can be more creative. It builds equity into the curriculum from the start, not as an afterthought. And really, the ultimate goal here is to prepare students for the real world. A messy, complex, always changing world, not just to pass a test. That's the real promise of this human-AI partnership.
And that kind of leaves us with one big final question to chew on. We've just seen how a curriculum, one of the absolute cornerstones of education, can be co-created this way. So if we can do it with a curriculum, what else is on the table? What other really complex, really creative, and what we used to think of as fundamentally human jobs are ready for this kind of deep partnership? Makes you think, right? What's next?